Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today we're going to be looking at a sorceress ability known as Static Field. Static Field is one of those amazing abilities which not only can be a one-point wonder, but can also be an amazing one to put 20 points into. And I'll explain myself. But Static Field is a kind of an odd one, and some people think they know what Static Field does, but quite honestly, even I don't understand it fully. Static Field is an ability which will reduce all of the monster's HP nearby, their maximum HP, not their current, by 25% every time the skill is cast. It also has caps. In normal difficulty, you can reduce a monster all the way down to 1% life. In Nightmare difficulty, the cap is 33%, and in Hell difficulty, it is 50%. So to clarify that, if I were to cast Static Field on a boss in Hell difficulty, the lowest I could get him down is 50% HP. If I were to cast this on a boss in Nightmare difficulty, the lowest I could get him down to would be 33%. In normal difficulty, if I cast this on a boss, I can get him all the way down to 1% HP and literally just punch him and kill him, because he'll have 1 HP left. Now, Static Field is a lightning ability, and that does mean that it is affected by lightning resistance. And this is where things get rather murky. So basically how this skill works is it does not get affected by negative lightning resistance. And I need to clarify this because it's complicated. So basically in the game there are multiple different ways that resistances work. The lowest that a resistance can ever possibly be is negative 100%, and the highest that a resistance can ever be is basically positive 100%, above the cap. So the cap is 100%. So we can be as low as negative 200 and as high as plus 200. And that is essentially how resistances are calculated. However, because they don't want Static Field doing more damage than it should do, Static Field is actually just simply working on a different scale of 0 to 100. So 100 means that Static Field does nothing, and 0 means that Static Field does 25%, which is the full percentage that it can possibly do. It is affected by Conviction and Lower Resist, but only down to 0%. So if a monster has, for instance, 50% lightning resistance, and you have negative 150% conviction, it does not bring him down to negative 100 in terms of Static Field. Instead, it just brings it down to 0. Enemy lightning resistance negative, which is also something that you can get, will also have an effect on conviction, and will help. Will also have an effect on Static Field, and will help Static Field deal its full 25% damage. The calculations are really kind of crazy, and if you'd like to delve deeply into the murky and quite honestly very, very terrible world of the calculations, Amazon Basin has all the calculations up, and you can take a look at them and kind of figure out how the ability works and what you might want to do with it. I'm going to actually take you over to Amazon Basin right now, and we're going to look at them together because I feel like we need to do it this way. So right off the bat here, you can see there is a table that lists this side is the enemy lightning resistance negative, and this side is conviction. So as you can see here, if we don't take into a consideration enemy lightning resistance and we look at conviction, we have a percentage decrease of this particular ability. So we've got 25% essentially, and going into the negatives doesn't do anything. So as long as the monster is at 0%, that's what we're looking at. We want the monster to be at 0%. Lightning resistance and lower resistance and conviction do not do anything to increase the damage of Static Field because they cannot bring lower resistance below the 0% number. Now, enemy lightning resistance, on the other hand, actually does have an effect on it. The problem with enemy lightning resistance is that it's not likely to bring it down past the 0% number. And this is kind of the catch-22 here, because if you have a monster that has 75% lightning resistance, you would need more than negative 75% enemy lightning resistance to bring them down below to a 10% number. And this is where lightning resistance and lower resistance and conviction can come in handy, because they can bring it down to the 0%, and then enemy lightning resistance can then bring it down more, which is definitely helpful. And the calculations are just really weird. It almost seems to me like the negative enemy lightning resistance has more of an effect on the ability when lower resistance and conviction are not in the calculation. Because as you can see here, we have a 0, 0 of 25, and if we go all the way down the 0 column to the negative 100% enemy lightning resistance, we have 50% static field. Whereas if we go all the way over to the negative 100% of both categories, we're at 25%. And the calculations are just really quite strange when you get into the negative numbers. Most people, I don't think, are really even going to be looking at these particular numbers when it comes to static field. Static field is treated mostly as an ability that is used as a secondary ability. You know, it's usually used to bring down the boss's HP really fast, or to reduce the HP of a group of monsters relatively quickly, and all of this can be relatively handy and helpful in many situations. Just keep in mind that if a monster has 0% enemy lightning resistance, you get the full 25%. If they're immune, you get 0. And everything in between is essentially exactly as it's stated. So if a monster has 50% lightning resistance, it is going to cut your 25% in half to 12.5%, and so forth and so on. And it's not until you get into the negative numbers that things start to get complicated. And if you are going to build a static field sorceress specifically, this could be something that you might be interested in. In the future, they have actually added a 5% synergy bonus to Nova. So those of you who are going to be building Nova sorceresses, this could be something that is very interesting to you, and you might want to put in a little bit of research and see if you can figure out how to get the most benefit out of static field. And you might be asking yourself, well, why would you want to max out static field? Well, the answer is because static field goes really far. Let me show you what it's like to have level 1 static field versus what it's like to have a maxed out static field. So right now I have level 1 static field, which is a 3.3 yard radius. So if I go out into the, it doesn't really matter, let's go to Stony Field, and I cast static, you will notice that I can't really hit anything unless it's right next to me. It has to literally be right next to me for me to hit it. However, if I were to have max static field, the range on max static field is so ridiculously large that I can hit just about everything on the entire field of battle. And being able to static down everything within range is a huge boon to how quickly you can potentially kill things. If I can hit everything on the field of battle with a static, no matter how far away they are, everything will be really low in HP when I use my Nova, for instance. So for instance, I could do something like this. I could run into a zone with a bunch of monsters, or teleport into a zone with a bunch of monsters, doesn't really matter. And I could just simply static, Nova, and everything dies. You can also use this as a support ability. Maybe you're not particularly doing the kind of damage that you would like to do at that particular moment. Maybe your gear isn't quite up to snuff. You can just walk around your group, and you can just spam static on everything and bring the HP down of all the monsters nearby. Now, in Hell difficulty, it does have a diminished effect of only 50%. So if we were to take this character into Hell, you would notice that the monsters will only go down to 50% HP. And for some reason, I still have not given this character Hell access. I think I've reset this character like 3 or 4 times, too, and still have not done it. Now, because it has a synergy with Nova, I think a lot more people are going to be beefing up Static Field to its maximum level. And you will find that I think that Static Field is a very effective and very devastating spell that can do a lot of damage to a lot of monsters really quickly. I find in my travels that as I go through the process of playing around with this particular build or this particular ability, that yes, Static Field can be extremely effective with only 1 point in it. You can utilize it to bring down the HP of bosses. You can utilize it to bring down the HP of a really tough monster that your group may be having trouble with. And bringing down a monster by 50% HP relatively quickly can have a huge impact on how quickly you can kill monsters. Static Field can also be utilized in other forms. So, for instance, there is actually a set that has Static Field when struck, and that is the Cow King set. They actually just recently beefed up the Cow King set quite tremendously. If you'd like to take a look at my video on the Cow King set, I do have that on my channel. I'm not going to be going over the Cow King set right now, but one of the things I wanted to show off was that it does have a 25% chance to cast level 5 Static Field when struck, which is absolutely amazing for melee characters. If I was any kind of melee character who would get in there in the thick of it on a regular basis and get beat up on a regular basis, Static Field is a really amazing ability that you can utilize to help out. There are also other items in the game, like for instance, Schaefer's Hammer, and quite a few items that have Static Field procs on them. You can get weapons like Stormlash Scourge, which has level 10 with a 15% chance. Schaefer's Hammer is level 10 with a 20% chance, which is even better. Crescent Moon, which is a rune word, which I also have a video on, is a level 13 Static Field with a 7% chance to proc. Hawanan's Refuge Tigulated Mail has level 3 with a 10% chance, and as we just saw, the Cow King's Leathers with the full set bonus has a 25% chance at level 5. These Static Field procs on these items are absolutely amazing and can be utilized really, really well on a lot of different characters. If you were, for instance, a paladin who was using Holy Shock, Crescent Moon could be absolutely amazing for you. And Crescent Moon also, believe it or not, has negative enemy lightning resistance on it, which will also beef up the Static Field effect. Schaefer's Hammer, Legendary Mallet, it has a 20% chance to cast level 10 on it, which is pretty amazing. And if you take a look at these items, I believe the Crescent Moon is probably the best one as far as Static Field procs goes, simply because Crescent Moon is a much higher level, as well as it has the negative enemy lightning resistance on it. So when you're looking at the rune word Crescent Moon, think about it in a different light, because it has negative 35% enemy lightning resistance on it, which means that it's going to increase the effectiveness of the Static Field. It has level 13 Static Field on it, and if you take a look at Static Field, you will find that level 13 Static Field is 11.3 yards. And to put that in perspective, Conviction is only 13.3 yards. So very, very close to the radius of Conviction. Static Field, level 13 Static Field is. And it's going to be going off all the time with a 7% chance to cast, especially if you put this in a mercenary item, for instance, like a Thresher. A Thresher would be a really good choice, a great Thresher as well. Both of those can actually be really devastating because they hit really, really fast. And if you put enough increased attack speed on your mercenary, you will find that the Static Field will be proccing all the time, and all of the monsters nearby will be relatively low on HP before you ever get to them. Now, when it comes to Static Field spamming, there is a downside, of course, is that it does not kill targets. So you have to remember that no matter how many times you spam the ability, no matter how many times you utilize your Static Field, nothing is ever going to die unless you finish it off. And that is a very important thing. So if I were to go, for instance, to Outer Cloister and just simply spam Static Field, nothing is going to die unless somebody kills it. However, all the monsters will be really low on health. As you can see, they basically have 1 health left. And that's the beauty of this, is that it will bring the monsters all the way down to 1 health in normal difficulty, and you can finish them off with just about any ability, like Nova. Now, of course, the faster that you can cast with this ability, the faster the ability goes off, the less danger you're in. So if you are going with only a level 1 and you have a relatively small range, you're not going to want to stand in there for very long, and this is kind of important. So you might want to run into the boss, cast as many static fields as you can within a short period of time, and get away, because you might be in danger. Definitely a good thing to be able to cast this faster rather than not. And if you are a Nova Sorceress, you're probably going to be running 200% faster cast, so you know, you're going to be well able to spam a couple statics in between your Novas. And if you do end up being a Nova Sorceress, I would recommend that you work a static field into your rotation. Probably start off with maybe 1 or 2 statics before you do your Nova, because it's going to have a pretty massive damage bump in the killing speed for your Nova ability. Being able to reduce the monsters down to 50% HP in hell difficulty is going to be pretty massive as far as your Nova killing speed. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's probably somebody out there who has a calculation as far as how much damage Static Field does versus Nova, because of course Static Field's damage decreases as the monster's HP decreases. So, for instance, if a monster has, say, let's say 10,000 HP is how much damage, health the monster has, and you subtract 25% of that monster's HP, it's going to be 2,500. However, once the monster reaches a much lower amount, let's say, for instance, he's at 60% HP, so 60% HP is 6,000, right? So 6,000 HP minus 25% is much lower than 10,000 minus 25%. So we're looking at only 1,500 damage at that point. And as you can see, my Nova is doing 1,037 to 1,413, which means that at a certain point, the Nova is doing more damage than the static would do. But in the beginning, when you first hit your targets, when the monsters are at full HP, Static Field is doing more damage than the Nova will. So working in your Static Field at the beginning of your Nova rotation is going to have a huge bump in the kill capacity of your particular character. Because, of course, you're doing much greater amounts of damage when the monsters are at full HP, and then when they start to lower down their HP, your Nova is going to be doing more damage than Static. I would imagine that it would probably work something like this. You would probably be looking at 2 to 3, maybe 4 static fields in the beginning of your rotation, and then you would finish it off with Novas, and that would give you probably your maximum amount of damage rotation. I'm sure somebody out there has an exact calculation of exactly how many static fields you should be hitting before you do your Nova, but I would imagine at least 2 to 3 static fields at the start of your rotation would have a much greater effect than just simply spamming Nova by itself. There's really not a lot more to go over when it comes to Static Field, and this is 18 minutes already, so I'm going to cut it short here. Static Field is an absolutely amazing ability, an absolutely great one-point wonder on any Sorceress build that you want to make. Even if you're a melee Sorceress or a ranged Sorceress, it doesn't matter. Static Field can be absolutely amazing to help increase your kill speed. If you're not a Sorceress and you are a melee character or a ranged character or any other character in the game and you'd like to add Static Field to your repertoire, maybe you're a Necromancer who'd like to increase his kill speed, putting a Crescent Moon pole arm on your mercenary can have amazingly good effects for your kill speed. That level 7 or level 13 static field on striking will soften up all the targets nearby and allow you to corpse explode them much easier. You have to imagine that if all the monsters nearby are at 50% health or less, depending on how your army is doing, it's going to make a huge difference in the kill speed of your character. One corpse explosion might finish off all the targets, whereas without static field, it might take you 2 or 3 or 4 corpse explodes. And this means, of course, that you're going to be able to get more usefulness out of the corpses that are on the ground as well. And as a character who specifically is built around corpses, that can be extremely effective. This particular weapon, the Crescent Moon, can be utilized on a lot of characters. A Zeal Paladin could get relatively good use out of it for static field procs. A Holy Shock Paladin, a Tesladin, you could utilize this relatively well on a Frenzy Barbarian and other characters. Specifically because spamming static field on the field of battle will soften up all the targets nearby and make it much easier for you to kill things. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos. And, oh, one thing I forgot to mention before I finish here is that Static Field is not affected by Lightning Mastery. So, Static Field does not actually get any increase in damage from Lightning Mastery or plus Lightning skill damage. And I would be amiss if I forgot to mention that. So to keep that in mind. As always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.